Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friday Harbor Film Festival of 2021 from the San Juan Islands in the Salish Sea, the traditional territory of the Strait Salish and Coast Salish peoples since time immemorial. We're here for discussion and Q&A with the creators of 3 films that we're showing this year. We have Carly Vester and Peter Bortel of 700 Feet Down. They are the co-directors. Carly is a Pacific Northwest filmmaker and writer. After a marketing and communications career, she began her documentary company at the intersection of people and the outdoors, from environment to the rich history surrounding it. Her short and feature documentaries have screened at film festivals and private events around. Carly also works with Wings of Rescue, which flies at-risk pets from overcrowded shelters and natural disaster areas. Peter Bortel, caring deeply for ocean life, is an avid diver with more than 2,500 adventures under the Puget Sound. He published a book on antique bottle recovery and is currently the CEO of Our World Films. Before I give Shaun Wolfe's bio intro, we're going to ask Sam Riley, the co-producer, director, and writer of I Am Ocean, to give us a little background on yourself, Sam.
All right, so my name is Sam. I am originally from Seattle, actually, so very close to the film festival where it's taking place. I grew up on the Salish Sea, but I moved to Australia about 5 years ago. This is my first ever film. I made it for Ocean Media Institute after deciding to take up filmmaking when my previous career kind of went down due to COVID. I was working on expedition ships as a guide and ornithologist, but I've been a long-time diver, and I met PT and found her to be really inspirational, and so I decided to go ahead and make a film this year after I wasn't able to attend university as I was supposed to originally, due to COVID again, because I couldn't get to New Zealand. So yeah, it's been an exciting year, and I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to be here.
Much, Sam. Appreciate that. All right. Well, from California, we've got Shaun Wolfe, and he's a cinematographer, a photojournalist, and conservationist with a passion for environmentally and culturally focused storytelling. The goal of his imagery is to have an impact on public perception, government policy, and individual action. After earning a master's degree in environmental science, he has worked exclusively in the documentary, film, and television spaces. His work has been featured on Netflix, Apple TV+, Nat Geo Wild, Amazon, The New Yorker magazine, and Nowness. Well, we've got through that. Welcome, all of you. I really appreciate y'all being here today. And did I miss anything? Do we have... Were there any little additional tidbits that you'd like to share before we jump into questions and discussion? We're all good. Okay, well, now I'm going to grill you. So we've got a collection of films here, and the one thread that I picked up throughout all of this, which probably wasn't too hard to pick up this thread, but it was interesting that all of the people in your films connected with the ocean for different reasons, but they all became really exhilarated by it. The same quality of enthusiasm from all of them. They were all unplugged. And, I'm not sure if you've all been able to see each other's films, but there was a definite sameness and raw quality to all of the folks in your film, in their connection and aliveness from having been, their time in the ocean. So I'll just... Who would like to go first, and talk about what these people experience and benefit from by being with the ocean? I didn't really pick an order, so let's just go with who's in the top left of my screen, which is Sam.
All right, sounds good. So PT has an incredible connection with the ocean, which I think is portrayed through the film fairly well. But I actually met PT about in 2017, and as soon as I met her, I was just incredibly inspired. We went out on a dive to look for a particular species of fish that I wanted to see at the time. But we quickly became friends, and I later posted a video online about a stingray that was sort of paralyzed and had been injured. And I sent it to PT to ask her what I should do about it. And she informed me about the Raise Awareness thing, and then we started collaborating on that. But PT's connection with the ocean is amazing. I mean, as she explained in the film, she was diagnosed with cancer in 2010, and in 2014 was given just a 2-year prognosis. And she has done an amazing job battling her cancer. Clearly, I mean, it's 11 years since her diagnosis now, and she's still doing extremely well and extremely inspirational. And she still dives almost every single day, except for the past few months when she's been in lockdown in Melbourne. But yeah, she has an incredible connection with the ocean. She knows each octopus under every pier individually. She knows every fish that hangs out there at her local dive site. So yeah, an incredible person and incredibly inspiring as well.
Thanks, Sam. That was great. Yeah, she really epitomizes the term "to come alive" through one's connection to nature. She really embodies that. So who would like to go next and talk about, because I saw it in all of the people in all of your films. They were all thrilled and energized from their work. So who wants to pick up the ball?
Yeah, I'll take it. First of all, thanks to Friday Harbor Film Festival for having us here. It's an honor, and I wish that I was in Friday Harbor. I've always wanted to go. But yeah, in my film, you know, I'm talking to scientists, and it was easy to get scientists to convey kind of their own excitement and awe of the ocean when I'm having them talk about a 20-year-long project that's finally being realized and is kind of the first of its kind, really on the West Coast. That part's the easy part. The hard part is, you know, I think all of us that are divers that have done a lot of diving and a lot of diving for work, like, you know, especially before I started with the camera, I was a science diver myself, and it can be a grind underwater. You know, you're working, you got tools, you're trying to get a job done, you're very focused, and kind of that awe of the ocean sometimes it's like background noise. And so to get people to remember that, like, you know, you always have those moments underwater, even when you're working, where it's something special happens and you realize where you are and kind of the wonder of the place, and getting them to talk about that was really what I tried to do in the beginning of the film, and you know, getting them to convey like some of the special moments that they've had underwater.
Thanks, Shaun. All right. Carly, Peter, how about your crew? They seem pretty stoked. I think you guys might be muted.
Can you hear me?
We can hear Peter.
When Carly and I first envisioned the film, we didn't have a set of divers. I figured, oh, you know, I can go down and do the photography, and realized that was that was a bit ambitious. So we actually put a post out on a Facebook diving site looking for a group of divers and offered them a free ride out to the Narrows Bridge, or several free rides. And we were fortunate enough to find this group of 4 divers who had been diving rebreathers for decades together and had done wrecks down to 400 plus feet, 14-hour dives, really a remarkable crew, and literally traded them their video for free diving. So we came out pretty fortunate on the film, and we've made friends with the divers. And I was just talking to one of them about cameras just an hour ago. So fortunate enough to make new diving connections and capture some wonderful video a few hundred feet beneath the sound in some really massive currents. So the current under the bridge can run up to 10 to 15 knots at times. So it was definitely a group effort.
Yeah, that was fascinating. Go ahead, Carly.
Sorry, and none of the divers had dove this particular dive site either. So I think that experience and being able to hop on board and go down and see the bridge was an experience, definitely, for all of them.
It's hard enough to make a film on land. How do you do it under the water, guys? Come on, let's hear some stories. Anyone?
That's a good one for Carly to answer.
Okay, Carly.
Carly, we've talked about that a few times. Why don't you go ahead?
Well, I think the irony here is I'm probably the only non-scuba diver in this group. I get ribbed a lot, especially as we've had this film kind of out in the wild, that I don't actually have my cert yet. Secret's out, but we had some awesome divers who were able to make that happen and work with their camera gear while I crammed myself in a corner on the dive boat and did the footage off of the dive boat and then stitched it together to produce the film. So I can't quite speak toward that underwater aspect as much as maybe Sam and Shaun could lend their expertise to.
Yeah, go ahead, either of you. Shaun? Have you made films on land and then also underwater? I mean, what's the challenge? What's the difference?
Yeah, sorry. I thought Sam was talking there, but yeah,
I'm sorry. Either of you.
I've done both, underwater and on land. Obviously, underwater is inherently challenging because you're taking a camera where it really shouldn't be going, right? Like cameras and water don't mix, and we do our best to make them not mix with a housing. But yeah, the biggest challenge really is that, especially if you're working with if I'm not the one directing a film or something, and I'm working with a director who doesn't dive, and I don't have a separate director's monitor necessarily. So, they're basically trusting me to go carry out their vision underwater without being able to see anything that's going on or anything that I'm doing. And, things are also, I just came off of a shoot where we had 15 potential dive days, and we were able to just get on the boat, not even dive, for 2.5 of those. So there's a lot of challenges with working on the water. Oh, and the boat we were supposed to use broke the day before we got there, so we had to use a backup boat. So yeah, that's pretty classic underwater work right there.
Yeah, in my case, I had just acquired my underwater housing very shortly before starting the film, and I was an experienced diver beforehand, but I was trying to learn my underwater housing whilst filming this film. And one of the tricky parts about filming underwater for sure is that you're used to your camera system, but the controls on an underwater housing are very different. They're in different places, and you have to use different things. You have a very small viewfinder, as long as you don't have like an external monitor or something, which I didn't. And so it's tricky in that sense. And you also need, another really hard thing is lighting. You really have to achieve good lighting underwater is really difficult because you lose light significantly as you go to depth. And so trying to bring those colors back underwater is difficult. So you need to have all sorts of other lighting attached to your housing. So that's an interesting aspect of it. One of the really cool things about filming underwater, though, that I found is, as far as wildlife goes anyway, I find it actually quite a bit easier than filming on land, because subjects underwater tend to be, they let you get very close, and they seem to be very curious a lot of the time. And so you can get close approaches to animals, and it's just super exciting. It's a really exhilarating thing, filming underwater. And, I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Thanks for all of your insights, you guys. I mean, it's just kind of a good reminder. It's just not the same as doing a film on land, which already has its own inherent challenges. I guess the one benefit is that people don't have to talk underwater, so you don't have to worry about that part. So, Rebirth of a Reef, Shaun, it's a short film but you had me hooked, you know, watching them toss those rocks over that barge and into the water. And then boom, like what, 8 months later, there's stuff growing on it. And, you know, you interviewed one of these biologists or one of these team members. And I don't know, but it sure seemed like it was an emotional thing to see it work, because you're talking about re-engineering nature in a sense. But can you describe how these people felt about the success of their project, like internally, what it meant to them?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I'm eloquent enough to give you the right words for that. I mean, this is a project that I mean, they literally looked at every single reef. They did diver surveys for almost 20 years, looking at every single reef in the region, Rocky Reef, looking at like the density of fish, the size of the rocks, the spacing of the rocks, the spacing of the reefs, like reef to reef, to figure out like connectivity for fish habitat. And the goal of the reefs was really to make the fishiest reef possible that's not going to get buried by landslides, because they're in an area that has constant landslides, and they're not necessarily what most people would think of as landslides. It's more of like a slow trickle of land into the ocean constantly. So these reefs get buried over a number of years, and it's a huge problem. And so, you know, to basically feel like after 20 years of research, like, hey, we know what reefs are going to succeed, and then to get a bunch of local rock and dump them in the water, more or less. I mean, this is, you know, a very well-funded project in terms of science, but to then dump it and come back and they have a series of, you know, 10 plus reefs out there, and to see like there's so many fish on them already, you know, and they haven't been there that long at all. So yeah, I think they were just, it's like it's like a lifetime's worth of work that they're seeing come to fruition and succeed. It's like the most fulfilling thing in a lot of their careers, I think.
Well, that's pretty profound. Did you say 20 years of planning went into that?
Yeah, we're talking like tens of thousands of dives to figure out what would work and what wouldn't.
Well, that's mind-blowing. You wouldn't.
Yeah.
And then here's Carly and Peter, and they had this thing that just went into the ocean in like seconds flat, and it's just there for the taking. There's a little bit of contrast there, right? In terms of what you guys are filming. Carly, Peter, can you talk a little bit about the you know, the ocean life, because the divers in your film were speaking about the collapsed bridge as an opportunity for nature. And I guess I'm interested in what you have to say about that, but also, Shaun, like, how does that strike you? Like this unnatural thing that fell into the water, you know, maybe after they give, you know, their understanding of it. I'd sure like to hear your response to that as well. Carly, Peter?
Sure. You know, the bridge created a wonderful dive site, but unfortunately it also created a wonderful fishing site. So I've been diving the bridge for 30 years, and I used to go down there and see 4-foot lings and auks under every crevice, and beautiful, long 20-foot wolf eels swimming around. And, you know, now you go down and the average ling is about 1.5 feet long, a lot of babies, very few auks, a couple wolf eels. Unfortunately, it's just fished constantly. And, you know, one of my long-term goals is to reduce the amount of fishing that happens in these wreck sites. They create a beautiful underwater park for diving, and we have a few of these that are restricted fishing. And the ones that are restricted fishing, you have life on every square inch, beautiful colors, all sorts of underwater creatures, everything you can imagine. But in sites where they've created these wrecks and you have fishing, it just gets fished out and barren. So while there is plenty of life down there, it's unfortunately attacked daily by fishermen.
What do you say, Carly?
Yeah, I mean, what Peter's saying is very true of this area in the Puget Sound, and the health of the Puget Sound has changed a lot over, you know, just the past 15, 20, 25 years, as evidenced through a lot of what divers are seeing. You know, it's a double-edged sword in some ways, and we touch on that a little bit. I feel like that could be a whole story unto itself, though. you have this artificial reef that has created space for animals to thrive that formerly weren't there due to the turbulent water that goes through the narrows, but also just the rocky bottom that doesn't have really anything for these animals to hide under, cling to. However, we still have human impacts in the area that are affecting this beautiful artificial, albeit artificial, reef system. So double-edged sword, I would say.
You know, this doesn't have anything to do with our conversation, but I have to ask you, since you're in the region, have you heard of the State of the Salish Sea report by the Salish Sea Institute?
Yes, yeah.
Nice to see you're on the right track, and maybe we'll have time to discuss later, but there's the idea of conservation, saving nature for nature's sake or for human sake. So that's always an interesting topic.
Mm-hmm.
But I did notice in your film, well, there was the little bit about octopus wrestling, right, in history. And I thought, oh my God. And then I noticed that you followed that up with these divers on your crew in current day, these macho guys are talking about the octopus, like right after talking about octopus wrestling decades ago. We've got these guys today in reverence for the intelligence of these sentient beings. And I just thought that was really beautifully done, what you did there. Nice job.
Thank you.
So Sam, the story of P.T. Hirschfield, was your film like about 8 minutes? It's a very short film. I don't know. I think you captured a story and summed up the entire meaning of life in 8 minutes. I don't know how you did that, but you
I think it was all PT.
Can you just tell us a little bit about PT? But I'm serious. I don't know if a picture's worth 1,000 words, but this woman's life is worth a gazillion. I mean, her experience was so such a, I don't know, that not everyone even needs to go through what she went through, but the fact that you captured it and it was done so simply was really powerful. I mean,
thank you. Yeah, I was immediately, I mean, when I met PT, I was like immediately inspired by her. And I think I mentioned before, but I initially just reached out to her because I wanted to see a specific species of fish when I first moved to the Mornington Peninsula. And, but from the moment I met her, I was like, oh, wow, this is a really, really cool person. And she's had such an amazing life. And she's actually very humble about it and doesn't speak about it very much. But as I got to know her better, just everything she says, I remember saying to a good friend of mine back like soon after I'd met PT, that if I ever were to make a film, I would make it about PT first, because her story is amazing. And I remember her telling me that when I first met her and when I first found out that she had cancer and that she had way outlived her, that what was estimated for her, she was telling me about how she thought that diving was really a massive part of her healing. Not that she wasn't giving credit to the chemo and things like that, but she clearly had a connection with the ocean. And to me, and I think to her too, I think the ocean and her connection with it was a huge driving force for keeping her going. And then the conservation efforts that she's led, I think it's one of those driving factors. And then on top of that, I think it's good for you to get in the water every day. Diving is such a relaxing and meditative thing. And that's something that PT and I talk about a lot. It's meditative, but it's stimulating at the same time. So it's exciting. And And I think that that's so good for you, as is being in the cold water and all of these things. So yeah, I think her story has most definitely inspired me, and that's why I wanted to bring it to the world.
Well, bravo. I don't know how such a simple thing is. I mean, maybe it's just because it's maybe a singular moment in your mind, in PT's mind, where she just intrinsically connects. Maybe it's her calling, but she's a great messenger for that. It really translates, and I think we all feel it. So thank you for being that channel.
She can say it better than anyone I've ever met. So.
Will you follow up with her? I mean, is she speaking, educating, or doing any more, outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke with PT just the other day. I have moved up here to Darwin, so we're not able to dive together as much as we were before. But we were actually regular dive buddies for a while. And before pitching this film idea to her, I actually hadn't seen her for about 2 years, but it kind of rekindled our friendship. And we're still friends. We still talk regularly. And every time I get back down to Melbourne, I'm most certainly going to be diving with her. And yeah, she's still involved in a lot of these campaigns at our local dive sites to try to protect the areas where we dive regularly. And and she's just, doing her thing, inspiring people and being a great person. So
awesome. That's good. Thank you. Tell her we send her our greetings as well, even though she may not realize that, how much of a part she played here, but she's touched a lot of people. And, everyone here at the Friday Harbor Film Festival just wants her to know how much we appreciate who she is and what she's doing.
Amazing. Well, I think she's watching now, so she'll have heard that. So that's great.
Hi. Okay. Well then, Shaun, I was curious. So I follow a little bit about entanglement along the West Coast. There's entanglement working groups with, the crab fishery and different fisheries. I don't know how it is that far down south in the LA area, and what the project you worked on, or your subjects worked on, was in a small place, just one location. But I guess I just wondered, and this could be something that the 700-foot down folks might wonder too, is how does that radiate out? I mean, I'm kind of wondering if that habitat improvement down in Southern California will have some impact on the whales' food supply, or what other species is it going to impact,
Oh man, I mean that's out of my wheelhouse of knowledge, but I mean the reef systems are good size, but they're not like, they don't cover all of LA County. It is a pretty small area if you think about like square mileage. So I do think locally it will, vastly improve fish populations, especially in the Palos Verdes Peninsula. And you would think that some of that fish population will spill over into other local reefs. But from my training as a scientist, I'm not so sure that spillover would make it anywhere north of Point Conception, surely. But you never know. I mean, I'm not really sure. But in terms of how it'll affect whale food source, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, I know the big whales, baleen whales, don't eat fish, but the presence of life and a healthy ecosystem could have other implications. But also, maybe the other way it will help is that this project will gain acceptance, and the word will spread, and perhaps it will help the restoration of other areas as well. Who knows?
Totally, and a healthy ecosystem is a win no matter what. It's going to benefit any local marine life in the area. Right.
Carly and Peter, so, we touched a little bit on some of the concerns now that there's this thriving place to go fish. You had a number of different interesting folks in your film, historians, and you got the divers, and I'm sure there's a kind of a whole society that surrounds that. bridge, scientists or marine research that's being done in that area, or even, Peter, what your concerns about the fishing? Are there other groups that are trying to kind of keep that in check or in balance? I mean, where's that all going? Where's the health of the marine environment going for
there was an effort by divers 15 or 20 years ago to turn it into a preserve, and they didn't get any traction. I don't think they had a lot of money behind them, but we definitely plan to pursue that goal. And I think there's a much larger group of divers and dive shops around the area that can support turning the Narrows and a few other areas into dive parks instead of massive fishing endeavors. So Carly and I definitely plan to look into it. And it was one of the reasons to increase the awareness with the film without hammering the issue and creating animosity. Maybe just limiting, used to be somewhat unlimited spearfishing down there. At least they've limited that to about 2 weeks a year for lingcod fishing. But maybe limiting some of the time for salmon and rock cod and lingcod fishing from above would be a decent compromise.
And with that too, I'll say that the Tacoma Narrows Bridge has this legend that it's created because of the collapse. So everyone in the Pacific Northwest seems to know the story, seems to have a bridge story, seems to have a connection with it. And with that, everyone kind of knows this giant octopus legend. So I think the hope with this film is if you didn't know about it, well, now you do. And if you did know about it, you have visuals to go with it, and hopefully a bigger story and a better understanding of that bigger picture. And I think that legend in itself is powerful enough to carry many messages with it.
Yeah, it's always what's outside of the film itself, right? Editing is difficult, but there's a much bigger picture. I'd like to open it up for any of you to ask each other any questions if anything has come up. Do any of you have any questions for each other?
Yeah. Oh, I'm unmuted. Okay, cool. Yeah, I have a question for Peter. So you've dove the bridge a bunch, and you said it's pretty deep, and the current's ripping. So how do you guys do that? Do you guys take motorized scooters down there and a bunch of light it up?
It's a good for our divers in the film. They had motorized scooters, but just a few weeks ago, I decided to swim about a mile to the bridge from the shore and just dive down to the bottom and mess around for an afternoon without a scooter. And we wound up being sucked at about 5 knots from one side of the bridge to the other, about a mile across, and had to swim back on the top, which took about an hour, and then walk back the shoreline. So yeah, it helps to have a boat. You've got about 15 minutes of slack unless you find a perfect day. If you're finding even a 1 knot exchange, you're going to have a 5 knot current under that bridge in a heartbeat. So we had to make multiple dives out there to just pull up the footage that we were able to secure. But it's a very challenging dive site. I've had tons of difficult experiences under that bridge. One of the reasons I always wanted to do the film was I'm limited on an open circuit down to about 180 feet, as you know, and I wanted to see what was down at 234, which is the absolute bottom. And it was nice to have divers who I could say, oh, go check out what's down at the arena at 234 feet and bring back some video. I always wanted to see it.
So do you guys always have to, is it marked by a buoy? Can you descend on a line there?
So no.
Oh man,
you have
that's so tricky.
You can grapple pieces of the bridge, as you saw in the film. You can grapple, if you're lucky. It took our captain half a dozen tries to grapple something. If not, you just typically will do a free descent down one of the towers. There's 2 towers. Imagine the Golden Gate Bridge towers. You do a free descent down to 146 feet, and then you turn inward and swim down towards the 234 in the middle. hopefully the current isn't helping you, assisting you in that process, because you get there pretty quick. And then you typically turn at 170, 180, and work your way back to the shore. It's maybe a 35-minute dive, and you're typically pushed maybe a mile either way by the time you finally come up from your safety stop, sometimes 2 miles. So it helps to have a boat out there.
That sounds like a really tough site to film, honestly.
Yeah, it was.
It's a tough site to be a bridge too, apparently.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for each other?
Actually, and I have a question for Sam, actually, and it might connect back to Shaun. But Sam, I'm curious about your partnership with Ocean Media Institute. And Shaun, I know you mentioned you knew someone from there, so I'm just curious about that connection with that.
Yeah, so I actually applied to University of Otago for a degree in natural history filmmaking, and was accepted into that program. And I was meant to start at the beginning of this year, and because I wasn't able to get to New Zealand, I had to defer a year. But I didn't really want to wait to start learning, so I reached out to Gianna, who's the director of the program, and who also runs Ocean Media Institute. And I basically pitched my idea about my film to PT, and she agreed to help me out with it through Ocean Media Institute. And I had seen a lot of the stuff that they were doing with I Am Ocean films, which people should go check out because they're all amazing. All the I Am Ocean films that they do are amazing. But yeah, I thought that PT was a perfect candidate for one of those films. And so, me and Gianna had a bunch of meetings about it, and we decided that it was a good thing to do. And and then I spent a few months working on this project. So that's the connection there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Carly, you've just established yourself as a documentary maker, so you're kind of feeling your way around still, or?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I actually went to graduate school for environmental journalism, so my background is very journalistic, and I've kind of steered the direction of documentary filmmaking. And 700 Feet Down is both Peter and I's first feature doc. We're working on another one right now that hopefully we'll be releasing next year. But it's been a fun adventure, and it's been a lot of fun to chat with people who have a lot more knowledge about things like diving than I do, but also B, just have these interactions with our environment and the outdoors and document that and tell their stories. So I'm always curious about connections to different things, because I watched both Sam and Shaun's films and thought they were fantastic. And it's like, well, where do you find these people? How do you get linked up with these different organizations? And it's all connections, but it's interesting.
That's right. There's certainly a lot that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, a film is a nice little thing wrapped up in a bow, and it's that's not how it is in real life. You guys are all skilled magicians, in other words. That's what filmmaking is. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just get your thoughts for a moment. I imagine, I don't know how much some people allow themselves to think about it a little more than others. I don't know, we're preoccupied, but there's an element of protection and conservation, just care for the ocean and the environment. And since you're in this field, what are your thoughts about what we're doing in this regard for nature itself, or for humans, or for both? I'm just exploring that subject because we're having to come out of an age of old practices that are essentially not serving us. And most of that practice revolves around fulfilling humans' needs. If some of the millennials today kind of understood, philosophies of 100 years ago. It's just like humans first, humans are powerful. That's it. It's all got to serve us. And that's changing. And we understand that's changing. And I think many people also understand that it doesn't have to be either or. So I guess I'm just interested in gauging what everybody's thoughts are about that nowadays. We're at a crossroads. So does anybody resonate with that idea and want to offer their thoughts?
Well, I think there's a famous piece of research out there that says in 20 years, there's going to be more pieces of plastic in the ocean than fish. And one thing I've always supported are the ocean cleanups with time and finances to increase the amount of these just local cleanups, because everything that's flowing down the rivers and the streams eventually gets to the ocean. So if we can do more sort of easy, active trash pickups from top of the water and under the water and organize more of these events, that's one thing that's definitely going to contribute to the health of our ocean, and really easy and fun to do with your friend groups or your school groups or anybody else. Put together a group, do a cleanup, help out the overall planet.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's a great reminder. It's community. It's fun.
Yeah, I think touching on that, I think that, everywhere that you go, everywhere that I've dove, and this is true on land as well, but specifically relating to the ocean, everywhere that I've dove, you see issues, and every time that you talk to old time divers, it's always a case of it was incredible back in the day, and now these reefs have declined, or these areas have declined. And I've dove in both Melbourne and the Salish Sea, and both places have, because they're so big to major port cities, have had some serious issues. In Melbourne, we have infestations of different types of starfish and things that you can see creeping down from the city, and they're getting pretty close to the dive sites that I was diving at with PT now. But what I think is important, and one thing that PT has definitely taught me, is that local people and people that just care about the areas that they are living can make a massive difference. I've always felt really helpless to be able to help in certain situations like this, but living on the Mornington Peninsula, PT and a lot of people that I met through PT, are all running their own little campaigns to help, to help fix these smaller issues, which altogether is making a huge difference, and I've seen massive change on the Mornington Peninsula for the positive over the last few years, just following all of these different campaigns run by individual local people that care about the environment where they live. So I think that's a good message for the future of environmental protection, that we can do it locally as well as on a larger scale.
Right, Shaun?
Yeah, I got too much to say about this, but change is coming, but it's really not coming fast enough. And I'm not that old, and I've seen a lot of change in the ocean happen in my lifetime for the worse. And it really, I wish that it was a humans first attitude, because most of the time what's good for most humans is also good for our environment. But it's a few humans first, and large corporations that are doing most of the damage to our environment. And so I would really encourage everyone to vote first and foremost, and to really do everything you can and be forgiving yourself when you're not perfect. But anything from switching your bank to looking at the products that you buy, to the way that you conduct yourself and hold your own friend groups accountable. Your diet, literally everything we do can help, and you don't have to do it all. And at the end of the day, it's not you or me that's causing most of the damage. But hit them where it hurts, their pocketbooks. That's what we should be doing the most.
Right. Carly.
I'll touch on the visuals and how important visuals and storytellers, like the wonderful people in this group, are to bring light and awareness to this issue. We talk about this a little bit at the beginning of 700 Feet Down too, Where with oceans, it's so difficult to communicate these things because not everyone is underwater witnessing the progression or the immediate just seeing it, right? Like it's something that's a little bit more challenging to communicate. So I think continuing to bring those visuals and continuing to tell stories and communicate the science is really, really important, and to do it in a compelling way that inspires people and motivates people, and hopefully moves them to take action, even if it's just in their own backyard, which is kind of the most important thing.
Yeah, wow, what a great collective input that was. Thank you so much, everybody, for speaking up and speaking up strongly and having your own thoughts and your own observations. It's so reinforcing. And I guess that's where that leads me, is that, not only are you guys inspiring an audience, you're probably inspiring each other. Do you think? I mean, it's hard work what you're doing. You're entrepreneurs, and you have to get your own funding. I mean, it's not like, it's a lot of work to make a film. And I know I want to offer you my appreciation and gratefulness and support, and Friday Harbor Film Festival does. And hopefully this discussion will make you feel supported and appreciated in that sense, to at least keep that piggy bank full. Yeah. In case you ever doubt yourself, that is. But I don't think any of you do. I don't know. I think you guys are all on a mission. Pretty good mission. Well, great. Well, listen, does anybody else have any additional thoughts that they'd like to share in terms of, what you'd like your audience to get from your film, or any call to action specifically that comes to mind?
I do want to say one thing, since all of us have touched on this in different ways. I know the Pacific Northwest is a pretty active community in general. People are drawn to the Pacific Northwest because of the nature that's there. But anyone that's watching this, just get out and go in your own backyard and find something cool. Not necessarily your literal backyard, although you could do that too. But just find some local spot in the ocean is what I would recommend. But it could be anything. I think especially if you are interested in the environmental stuff, you got to celebrate the small wins and kind of remember what's so important and why we're trying to protect all this stuff in the first place. So going out and seeing it and having those experiences yourself is so key. People aren't going to protect what they don't know.
Great. Thanks for that reminder, Shaun. Absolutely right. Well, I just want to say again, thank you so much for all of your hard work and for taking the time to join us and allow all of us to see your films. And I just love bringing a good group like this together. And I see a lot of energy, a lot of talent, and it's magic, the magic of film. So you guys are all fantastic creators, and good luck, Carly, with your new endeavor and breaking away from the corporate world. I support you in that, and big hugs to PT wherever she is, and big hugs to the octopus underneath the bridge. And
Thanks for having us all, Heather, I think on kind of behalf of all of us, but also Friday Harbor Film Festival for showing these films, for having such an engaging and wonderful conversation with great questions for all of us, and talking about conservation and making it a discussion. I love it. Appreciate it.
Excellent. You're so welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we'll hope to see you here in person someday. Take care, everybody.